The room fell completely silent the moment the powerful CEO stepped away from the stage, looked directly at the man holding a sleepy little girl in his arms, and asked him for something no one in that glittering ballroom ever expected to hear. She wasn't offering a business contract, an investment, or a promotion. She was asking for a single evening together, just one honest date before the night was over. Hundreds of wealthy guests stared in disbelief, while the exhausted father froze as if the world had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. Imagine standing where he stood. After years of carrying heartbreak alone, would you believe someone truly saw your worth, or would you assume it was another cruel joke waiting to break your heart? Nathan had never imagined becoming a single father before turning 35. His wife, Rebecca, had passed away after a sudden illness only weeks after giving birth to their daughter, Sophie. Since that day, every sunrise had been another reminder that life could change without warning. He worked as a maintenance technician at a small community hospital in Ohio, fixing broken lights, repairing heating systems, and making sure patients stayed comfortable. The paycheck barely covered rent, child care, groceries, and medical bills that still lingered from Rebecca's treatment. Every night he returned home with aching hands, yet Sophie always greeted him with the same joyful smile that somehow erased a little of his exhaustion. She became the reason he kept moving even when grief whispered that giving up would be easier. Across the city lived Victoria, one of the youngest CEOs in the country. She had transformed a struggling technology company into a billion-dollar success through determination that amazed the business world. Magazine covers praised her intelligence, television interviews celebrated her leadership, and investors competed to work beside her. Yet behind every polished photograph stood a lonely woman who spent birthdays inside empty penthouses and holidays surrounded only by assistants and security guards. Her parents had died within months of each other years earlier, leaving her with wealth beyond imagination but almost no one who truly loved her without expecting something in return. She often watched ordinary families laughing in public parks and secretly wondered why genuine happiness always seemed to belong to people with far less money. Their lives crossed unexpectedly one rainy afternoon when Victoria visited the hospital after donating equipment to the pediatric department. As photographers crowded around her, she noticed a little girl patiently coloring on the hallway floor while waiting for her father to finish repairing a leaking ceiling pipe nearby. Nathan apologized for the mess on his clothes and gently thanked Victoria for helping children he would never meet. Unlike everyone else, he didn't ask for a picture, a favor, or an opportunity. He simply returned to work because his shift wasn't finished. That brief moment stayed in Victoria's mind far longer than the applause she received from reporters outside. Over the following months, fate seemed determined to place them in each other's path. Victoria occasionally volunteered at community events sponsored by her company, and Nathan attended many of them because Sophie loved the games and music. Victoria quietly observed how Nathan always let Sophie eat the last cookie, wore old shoes so she could have new ones, and carried her on his shoulders whenever she became tired. There was never any performance in his kindness. He simply loved his daughter with every remaining piece of his broken heart. For the first time in years, Victoria admired someone not because of achievements or influence but because of quiet sacrifices no newspaper would ever report. Despite her growing feelings, Victoria hesitated. She knew people would accuse her of seeking attention if she pursued an ordinary single father. Her board members constantly encouraged her to date politicians, celebrities, or wealthy executives who could strengthen the company's public image. Nathan, meanwhile, believed someone like Victoria belonged in a completely different universe. He respected her generosity but assumed she barely remembered his name. Every time Sophie excitedly mentioned the kind business lady, Nathan smiled politely while convincing himself that dreams like those only existed in movies. Everything changed during the company's annual charity gala. Victoria invited hospital employees to recognize healthcare workers, and Nathan attended only because Sophie's babysitter canceled unexpectedly. Dressed in a modest second-hand suit, he stood near the back of the ballroom trying not to attract attention. Sophie eventually fell asleep against his shoulder as speeches echoed through the elegant hall. Victoria noticed them immediately. While executives discussed profits and future expansion, she couldn't stop looking at the father who gently adjusted his jacket around his sleeping daughter to keep her warm. When Victoria reached the podium for her closing speech, everyone expected another polished corporate message. Instead, she surprised the audience by speaking about loneliness. She admitted that success had never filled the emptiness left by losing family and sacrificing every personal relationship for work. Then, with tears beginning to gather in her eyes, she walked down from the stage and stopped in front of Nathan. She quietly confessed that despite everything she owned, she had no husband, no children, and no one waiting for her after every celebration. She looked at Nathan with complete honesty and publicly asked if he would consider sharing just one dinner with her that very evening after the event ended, not because she needed publicity but because she wanted to know the man whose love for his daughter had restored her faith in people. The ballroom remained frozen. Cameras captured every expression, yet Nathan noticed only Sophie peacefully sleeping in his arms. Years of disappointment had taught him to distrust moments that seemed too beautiful. He feared becoming another headline or temporary inspiration before Victoria returned to her glamorous world. Still, when he looked into her eyes, he didn't see pity or entertainment. He saw loneliness that perfectly mirrored his own. He accepted, not because she was powerful, but because for the first time since Rebecca's passing, someone had seen the man behind the grief instead of the widower carrying it. That dinner lasted nearly 5 hours. They spoke about childhood memories, loss, fears, impossible dreams, and the strange ways pain changes people forever. Victoria laughed without pretending to impress anyone. Nathan smiled without forcing himself to appear strong. Sophie woke briefly, climbed into Victoria's lap without hesitation, and eventually fell asleep there too. In that quiet restaurant corner, surrounded by ordinary families enjoying ordinary meals, 3 lonely hearts unknowingly began creating something extraordinary. Life did not become perfect overnight. The media criticized Victoria's decision. Investors questioned her judgment. Strangers accused Nathan of chasing wealth. Sophie struggled with the confusing emotions of accepting another caring adult into her life. Yet each challenge only revealed how deeply they were choosing one another. Victoria learned that genuine love required patience instead of control. Nathan discovered that accepting happiness wasn't betraying Rebecca's memory. Sophie finally experienced the warmth of having someone braid her hair before school and cheer at every dance recital. Several years later, the same ballroom hosted another charity event. This time Nathan stood confidently beside Victoria, no longer hiding in the shadows, while Sophie proudly introduced them as her parents. The applause filling the room had nothing to do with business achievements. It celebrated 2 wounded people who had dared to believe that broken hearts could still build beautiful futures together. Their story reminded everyone present that sometimes the richest person is desperately searching for the simplest kind of love, while the poorest soul may already possess the greatest treasure of all. Before you go, tell us in the comments, if you had been in Nathan's place that night, would you have accepted Victoria's invitation, or would fear have made you walk away? Some people wait a lifetime for a second chance, while others almost miss it because pain convinces them they no longer deserve happiness. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so more people can be reminded that kindness, courage, and love still have the power to change a life forever.